Hey everyone, welcome back. Over the last couple of weeks, Republicans on Capitol Hill have been diving deep into their latest investigative pursuit, trying to prove that President Joe Biden accepted a bribe from the Ukrainian gas company Burisma while he was vice president. In fact, up until last week, they were saying that there were tapes of Joe Biden accepting that bribe, and that they would be getting a form from the FBI that would prove that those tapes existed. However, then the FBI gave them the form and they realized, oh, yeah, this is not actually substantiated intel. There aren't any tapes here, and these tapes may not even exist. And then people like Senator Cruz, Senator Grassley, and Representative Comer had to go on the news and say, hey, yeah, about those tapes, we don't know if they exist. And at one point, even Fox News had to say, you have to put up or shut up at some point, and that point is now. And this is a pattern that we've seen with a lot of Republican investigations, going back to Hillary's emails, the Durham report, and all of the false allegations of voter fraud in the 2020 election. Republicans come up with a wild premise of some massive criminal conspiracy, they say that they're going to investigate it, and then one of two things happen. Either they then come across a lot of information that disproves their original premise, or because their premise is not based on anything, they don't find any information at all. And quite frankly, that's kind of how they're designed to work. And Republicans actually prefer it when their investigations don't get to the bottom of anything. So why don't Republicans care if they actually get their hands on the evidence? Well, the simple answer is that when they don't actually find any information, it actually feeds into the story that they're already trying to tell their voters. Think about it, a lot of modern conservative narratives revolve around the idea of a grand conspiracy. This shadowy cabal made up of whoever the enemy of the day is that is out to get you. So, if we put on our tinfoil hats for a moment, if such an organization had existed for hundreds if not thousands of years, one would imagine that they've gotten pretty good at covering things up in that time. So, if Republicans make an outlandish allegation, attempt to investigate it, and then don't find anything, they can turn to their base and say, the fact that we didn't find anything doesn't mean it wasn't true, it just means that that shadowy cabal covered it up, and it's yet another conspiracy to add to the pile. And if your audience is already inclined to believe one conspiracy that you sold them, it shouldn't be too hard to sell them another one. As an example, let's look at the current investigation being led by House Oversight Chairman Representative Comer. Now, he alleges that Joe and Hunter Biden both accepted $5 million bribes from the Ukrainian firm Burisma. And the proof for this allegation is an FBI 1023 form where he claims there is evidence that there are recordings of Joe Biden taking that bribe. However, the FBI has given him access to the document, and his tune is very quickly changed. Suddenly him and a whole bunch of other Republican representatives and senators are saying, well, we don't know if the tapes are legitimate, we don't even know that they exist, we just want to make sure the FBI thoroughly investigated this. Suddenly a lot less confident that this is going to be the bombshell they were claiming it was only a few weeks earlier. And even Matt Gaetz has had a very lucid moment when he was on Steve Bannon's podcast where he said, this is just at the end of the day another allegation. What we need to be doing is following the money and digging into Hunter Biden and Joe Biden's financials. And that would be very easy for the committee to do if they wanted to. They've already conducted a months-long investigation into Hunter Biden's finances, so they have that information. And Joe Biden's finances are public record, as he released them when he was running for president. So, if they wanted to look through that information and find something, they could. Instead, they're choosing to focus on a set of tapes that may or may not exist. Curious. My personal favorite example of this phenomenon comes from the Republicans' repeated allegations of widespread voter fraud in the 2020 election. And when it came time to investigate, it didn't matter whether the investigation was being run by Republicans, Democrats, Independents, or even the cyber ninjas. All of them came to the exact same conclusion, that there was no evidence of widespread voter fraud in the 2020 election. Additionally, when law enforcement agencies stepped up their investigations into potential cases of voter fraud to kind of explore this issue further, the vast majority of the people that they ended up arresting and convicting for election-related crimes turned out to be Republicans, which is a little bit ironic given who was making the allegations. I think they doth protest too much. Now, when it comes to evaluating whether any future allegations or investigations are BS, the question you should be asking is, are they willing to take it to court? You can say a lot of different things in the media, but once you're in that courtroom, you are under oath, and the threat of perjury is real. So, people do tend to stick a little bit closer to the facts. Two great examples of this from recent history are the Durham Report and Donald Trump's 2020 election lawsuits. The Durham Report was heralded by a lot of conservatives as this expose of systemic corruption within the DOJ, where they politically targeted Trump in coordination with the Clinton campaign to stop him from becoming president. And those would be easily provable, very serious crimes if they had occurred. But those aren't the cases Durham charged. Matter of fact, 2 of the people he charged ended up being acquitted, and the only conviction he got was a guilty plea for an FBI agent changing a single email. Hardly evidence of an agency-wide conspiracy. And in fact, within that report, Durham himself stated that he did not find any political motivation in Trump's investigation, and that the FBI did have enough evidence to open a preliminary investigation, although he disagreed with the previous Inspector General's report that they had enough evidence to initiate a full probe. But at the end of the day, that is a difference between 2 different professionals having opinions about the substance of evidence, which is a natural thing to see. But what was he willing to take to court? Not very much. What did he end up suggesting? Very little that wasn't already in the Inspector General's report that had been released almost 4 years earlier. So, at the end of the day, once you read the report and see what they were willing to charge, you can see that all of those allegations really didn't amount to anything. And then we get to Donald Trump's election lawsuits. Out of, I believe, 40 or 50 lawsuits that he filed, none of them alleged voter fraud. They talked about, we don't like how this ballot curing process was conducted in this county, or we don't think that this particular machine can verify signatures appropriately, or we don't think that the way ballots were counted based on their postmark date is compliant with state law, or a number of other technicalities, but at no point did they ever allege or offer any evidence of massive voter fraud. And that's because, again, the threat of perjury is real. Had Donald Trump's lawyers come in and said that, they could have been exposing themselves to a lot of legal risks. And as we've seen over the last couple of years, Donald Trump's lawyers already have enough legal exposure to go around. They don't need any more. So at the end of the day, it turns out that when Republicans are conducting investigations, they don't really want to find any evidence, as the information they end up uncovering almost always ends up completely contradicting their original allegations. However, if they don't find any information, it feeds really nicely into their conspiratorial narratives, as they can say, of course we didn't find that information. That darn shadowy cabal got to it first and covered it up and hid it where we couldn't find it. So you should just take our word that this is absolutely true, despite the fact that we have no evidence, and we wouldn't dare take this thing to court. And yes, I can hear the conservatives very vigorously typing in my comments section something about a Russia hoax, so what we're going to do is a follow-up video where we're going to go over some of the recent Democratic-led investigations, as well as both of the recent special counsel investigations into Trump, as conservatives do tend to lump these things together, despite the fact that, while yes, Democrats are political by their nature, the special counsels are not. But if you have any questions about any of those investigations you would like me to address in that video, please leave them in a comment, and I will do my best to address them in that video. Until then, think about it.